لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, assalamu alaikum, which is a greeting of peace. Peace be unto you. Thank you for tuning into another episode of The Deen Show. We are here trying to help you understand Islam and Muslims. Now, my next guest, who is coming out in a minute, he's been with us before. He has a special section at thedeenshow.com. You can hear his story and how he embraced Islam, amongst other topics that we've done with him. Now, we are going to be talking about Muslims in America, American history with Muslims. Now, just to note, we're going to be using the word Islam. By now, many viewers who've been with us, you know what this word means. Simply surrender, submission, obedience, doing all this sincerely to the one God who created the sun, the moon, and everything in this universe. And that's easily summed up with one word in Arabic, which is Islam. And a Muslim is one who does this action. The action of submitting and surrendering, sincerely being obedient to the one God who created everything in this universe. It's much easier summed up with one word, Muslim. How long have these Muslims who implement Islam been in America? And that's what our next guest, Dr. Gerald Dirks, is going to help answer when we come back here on the Deen Show. You don't want to go nowhere.
Allah, there's only one God and Muhammad is his messenger. Allah, la ilaha illallah. Allah, there's only one God and Jesus was his messenger. Allah, la ilaha illallah.
I don't know why I did that. Maybe it's just to break the ice. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace and the mercy of God be upon you.
And you too, my brother. How are you?
Good, good.
It's good to have you with us here on the Deen
Thank
Show.
you.
We've covered quite a few topics with you before. For those of our viewers who don't know who you are, just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I converted to Islam in 1993, did the Hajj pilgrimage in 1999. Prior to that, I'd practiced for a number of years as a psychotherapist. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology. But before that, I was an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church, having received a Master of Divinity degree from Harvard Divinity School.
Did Christopher Columbus discover America, or did Muslims discover America? Let's talk about this history with Muslims in America.
Well, it's kind of ironic to say someone discovered America when American Indians were already here. But this issue of Muslims in American history is a very important issue. And
why is this so important?
Well, let me illustrate it with a story. It was a year before 9/11.
Yes.
And my wife and I were standing at our local Midwestern airport located right on the buckle of the Bible Belt, waiting for our luggage to come down the conveyor belt. And a gentleman across the way, maybe 20 feet, 30 feet away, happened to glance over, and he saw my long, unruly beard, and he saw my wife wearing her scarf and her long outer garment. And he did sort of a double take, I noticed out of the corner of my eye. And then over the course of the next 5 minutes, he sort of slowly meandered across the space until he was standing right next to me. And at that point, he turned to me and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, I'm from 35 miles north of here." And he said, No. I mean, where are you from originally?" And I said, "Well, I was born 30 miles north of here." And at that, sort of a puzzled, confused look crossed his face, and he started to turn and walk away. And then you could just see the light bulb going on over his head. And he turned back to me with this look of triumph on his face, pointed to my wife and said, "Well, where's she from?" And I said, "Well, she was born 40 miles north of here." You see what he was trying to do, brother? He had correctly identified us as being Muslims. And because he had made that identification, he was going to rob us of our American identity and our American heritage. And in doing so, he was reflecting a myth that is very, very common amongst the American public. and that is that Muslims came first to America in the latter half of the 20th century, that somehow Muslims are Johnny-come-latelys on the American scene. The truth of the matter, however, is far, far different than that. We Muslims have been here long before the latter half of the 20th century. We Muslims helped tame and settle the American Wild West in the latter half of the 19th century. We Muslims fought to preserve the Union in the American Civil War between 1861 and 1865. We Muslims stood armed and ready to defend the American coastline from British invasion in the War of 1812. We Muslims fought to secure American independence from Great Britain during the American Revolutionary War. We Muslims built the agricultural base of the American South long before there ever was a United States of America. We Muslims were here in the early part of the 17th century in the British colony at Jamestown. We Muslims were here in the latter part of the 16th century in the Spanish colonies. We Muslims were here with the Spanish conquistadors in the early part of the 1500s. We Muslims were here with Columbus in 1492. And yes, we Muslims, even though this is a little controversial, we Muslims were here long before Christopher Columbus ever thought of coming to America.
Amazing. Tell us now, I want to just go backwards at the airport. You were doing nothing, minding your own business, but was it because now we see a lot of Muslims, and we addressed this in previous shows, the beard. So you had you said the ruly beard.
The long, unruly beard.
And now your wife.
Wearing the scarf.
Which if you look back, with the beard, in any picture that is portrayed of supposedly Jesus, he has a beard, doesn't he?
Yeah, in most of them. Pictures of him as a youth obviously do not.
Or most of, even if you look at the Ten Commandments with Moses, he had a beard, didn't he?
Well, that's how artists
they tried to
represent him.
And if you look back to some of the modest women, if you look at who supposedly Jesus' mother, what they have portrayed of her in the picture, you will see her wearing the headscarf.
Sure.
And many of the righteous women, you'll see them preserving their modesty wearing this, and that's all.
That's correct.
You know, so this is just amazing. Now, tell us, continue on. How come most of us, we don't really get to know this? This is a shock to a lot of people that are listening. You know, why is this?
Well, it's because knowledge is so compartmentalized. Unless you read Arabic or have access to someone who reads Arabic, and you go back to these very early Arabic books, you won't find this information. But if you do go back and you read Arabic or have access to someone who reads Arabic, you go back to these early books, you find that there were a number of voyages from the Muslim world to the Americas long before Columbus. In fact, the earliest of these was Kashkash ibn Said ibn Aswad, who sailed from Muslim Andalusia, what is now Spain, Portugal, in the year 889, 600 years before Columbus, sailing west across the Atlantic, discovering a new land, apparently islands in the Caribbean, and sailing back to Andalusia. About 100 years later, Ibn Farouk, in the year 999, made a similar voyage from Muslim Andalusia to the New World.
You said Ibn. What does that mean for?
Son of Farouk.
Son of Farouk. That would be his father. Okay.
Yeah. And then Al-Idrisi, famous Muslim geographer and scientific advisor to the King of Sicily in the 12th century, wrote about a group of 8 Muslim sailors that sailed west across the Atlantic from Muslim Andalusia, or Spain, Portugal, arrived at 2 new islands, hitherto unknown to them, and there they were captured by American Indians and held captive for a few days. And after 2 or 3 days, another Indian came who served as translator between the Indians and these Muslims from Andalusia. And he arranged for their release, and they went back to Andalusia. Now, the important thing in this story is to stop and think for a moment. Wait a minute. There's an American Indian who can serve as translator? There's an American Indian who has had enough contact with Muslims that he can speak Arabic and serve as a translator. So we have these stories from written in very early Arabic books detailing these 3 voyages from Muslim Andalusia. But it's not just from Muslim Andalusia. It's also from what today we call Morocco. For example, Sheikh Zain ad-Din Ali ibn Fadl al-Mazarandi sailed west from Morocco across the Atlantic in the year 1291, reached the New World. And perhaps the most impressive of all is sailing from West Africa, the Mandinka Kingdom of Mali. Around the year 1310, the Sultan or king of that empire, named Abu Bakari, sent 2 expeditions west across the Atlantic. Now, Columbus sailed in 1492 with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. From what is documented in the ancient Arabic books, Abu Bakari sent 2 fleets which together totaled 2,200 ships. So this was a huge amount of men moving west across the Atlantic. And we know they reached the Americas. They never returned, but we know they reached the Americas because there is a South American Indian tribe which even to today uses Mandinka ideograms as their form of written communication. There's a North American Indian tribe whose syllabus of words was written down by a Moravian missionary in the mid-1700s. And when modern linguists look at that syllabus, they discovered a large number of those words are Mande, the language of the Mandinka of Western Africa. So they obviously made it to the Americas, explored parts of South America and North America, intermarried with the American Indian tribes, and gradually their history was lost. But they were here, and they were here almost 2 centuries before Columbus. So yes, we Muslims were here before Columbus.
You mentioned that if you don't have access to some of the Arabic books on history, or do you find this in some of the history writings here in America, like when you were attending university at Harvard?